The session is now called to order. Everybody is requested to rise for the national anthem.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisingil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bakaw, may nilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nanginginig, ang bituin ng araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng walang pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa ating mo. Aming ligaya na pagmay mga ating at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Please remain standing for a minute silent prayer and meditation. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we defer the calling of the roll.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we defer the approval of the journal.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we take up reference of business and direct the Secretary General to read the titles of the bills and resolutions on first reading. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary General is directed to read the bills.
Reference of business, bills on first reading. House Bill 4718, placing the provincial, sub-provincial, and district jails under the jurisdiction of DJMP, Representative Victoria.
To the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Bill 4719, converting the satellite office of the Maritime Industry Authority in Calbayog City, Samar into an extension office, Representative Edgar Sarmiento.
To the Committee of Transportation.
House Bill 4720, declaring July 27 every year special non-working holiday in recognition of the founding anniversary of the Iglesia ni Cristo, Representative Castelo.
To the Committee of Revision of Laws.
House Bill 4721, granting employees the right to disconnect from work-related electronic communications, Representative Castelo.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment.
House Bill 4722, adopting telecommuting and other ICT-based solutions to boost global competitiveness, Representative Del Rosario.
To the Committee on Information and Communications Technology.
Resolutions. House Solution 672, urging the Committee on Housing and Urban Development to look into the possibility of transforming Camp Aguinaldo and Camp Crame into mixed-use urban housing and economic zone at Botocabe and Castelo.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Solution 670, strongly condemning the killings that occurred, resulting in the death of 8 fishermen at Lee.
To the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
House Solution 674, urging the House to extend assistance to the family affected by the arbitrary killings of Lee.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 675, calling for an investigation of the conduct of animal cruelty, Representative Villafuerte.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 676, condemning the officers and members of the NBI's task force against illegal drugs, Representative Alejano.
To the Committee on Dangerous Drugs.
House Resolution 677, urging the appropriate committee to inquire in the recent jailbreak incident in North Cotabato City, North Cotabato District Jail, Representative Alejano.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 678, direct the Committees on Agrarian Reform and Labor and Employment to inquire in the case of the 52 Mindanao Sacadas, Representative Casilaw, Sarat, and several others.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 679, direct the Committee on Human Rights to inquire in the December 24, 2016 extrajudicial killing of Jimmy Soto, Representative Casilaw, Sarate, and several others.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 680, direct the Committees on Agrarian Reform and Human Rights to investigate the plight of farmers, human rights abuses, and militarization of Hacienda Matias, Representative Casilaw, Sarate, and several others.
To the Committee on Human Rights.
House Resolution 681, direct the Committee on Agrarian Reform and Human Rights to investigate the abuses against farmers, Representative Casilaw, Sarate, and several others.
To the Committee on Human Rights.
House Resolution 682, commending ABS-CBN Corporation, Representative Nieto.
To the Committee on Public Information.
House Resolution 683, expressing the fond condolences on the demise of former Mayor Emiliano Mel Campos Lopez Jr., Representative Nieto.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 684 and 685, declares the office of the President to grant or convert to subsidy the emergency calamity loans, Representative Uy Barreta.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
House Resolution 686, declaring January 17 of every year as James J. L. Gordon Days, Representative Hernandez.
To the Committee on Revisions of Laws.
House Resolution 687, calling for an investigation on the violent shooting of farmers, Representative Alvarez Pantaleon.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communications letters dated December 14 of Michael G. Aguinaldo.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
Letter dated December 19 of Maria Gleda E. Lim.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
Letter dated December 23, 2016 of Pelilia C. Biloso.
To the Committee on Appropriations. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, with leave of the House, I move that we hold the privilege hour.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Antonio Tino of Party List Act Teachers who wishes to avail of the privilege hour.
Representative Antonio Tino of Party List Act Teacher is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, colleagues. I rise today to share with this body, with the public and for the record, this representation's views on the 2017 General Appropriations Act, which was recently signed into law by President Duterte just last December, in relation to the administration's promise of change. President Duterte was swept into power on the wave of this promise. His election was a strong statement of a people fed up and angry, having long been under a government of the privileged few and for the privileged few. Congress was presented with the first budget bill of the Duterte administration in August last year, and within a few months approved and ratified it before session went on recess in December. House Bill 3408, or what would eventually become the 2017 General Appropriations Act, was labeled as a budget for real change or budget ng tunay na pagbabago. This representation, along with the Makabayan bloc of progressive party lists, of which I am a member, scrutinized the said budget on the basis of those promises of change, since we believe that if this new administration is going to walk the talk, its first national budget will be its legs. Upon our scrutiny of the 2017 national budget, we believe that genuine change will be far from our reach. That is why last December, along with the Makabayan bloc, I voted no to the 2017 national budget. We acknowledge several gains brought about by the campaigns of various sectors during the budget deliberations, which were reflected in the General Appropriations Act. So there were some successes. These include the people's demands for the restoration of cuts in the budgets of state universities and colleges, the increase in chalk allowance for classroom teachers in public schools, the provision mandating the regularization of contractual teachers in both basic and in the public schools and in state universities and colleges. The restoration of the cuts to the maintenance and operating budgets of public hospitals, free irrigation for farmers, and free tuition for undergraduate students in state universities and colleges, of which I will say more a little later on. These gains indeed translate into concrete benefits for the people. However, in the grand scheme of things, in the context of a 3.3 billion peso budget, we see no fundamental change. This should really come as no surprise, given that if we go back to the point number 1 of President Duterte's 10-point social economic agenda, point number 1 states, continuing and maintaining the current macroeconomic policies, including fiscal, monetary, and trade policies. In other words, from the outset, the Duterte administration committed to continuing the neoliberal economic policies that have globally created a world in which, according to Oxfam, it's in the papers just today, according to Oxfam, 8 individuals led by people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, own as much wealth as 3.6 billion people, as half of humanity. No? That same pattern of economic growth creating gross social inequality via the aforementioned neoliberal economic policies is playing itself out in our own country. Professor Shelito Habito in 2012 pointed out that the growth in the aggregate wealth of our 40 richest families in 2011, which Forbes Asia reported to have risen by $13 billion in 2010 to 2011, was equivalent in value to 7.5% of the growth in our total GDP at the time. No? So, in other words, to translate that roughly, more than 3/4 of the wealth created in that period was captured by a handful, 40 of the richest families in the Philippines. So the 3.35 trillion budget for 2017 will very clearly perpetuate the pattern of highly unequal growth, making a handful of rich families stupendously wealthier, while unemployment, underemployment, and poverty worsens. The 2017 budget will continue to neglect that will provide for more effective and sustainable benefits for the people. The 2017 General Appropriations Act maintains the conditional cash transfer program as the centerpiece poverty safety net. A recent Pulse Asia survey, only last December, shows that the number one concern of Filipinos, an overwhelming majority, or the main concern of Filipinos is increasing the salary of workers. This is the most urgent concern of Filipinos, with 45% of respondents naming this as their top concern over other concerns such as fighting criminality or fighting graft and corruption in government. So the main concern is salary. No? And yet, if we look at the national budget, even in its own backyard, the government is not adequately addressing the issue of decent salaries for its workers. If we look at the provision for salary increase in the almost 2 million almost 2 million government employees, both in the national government and the local government units, including the employees in this own chamber, in this own House of Representatives. The 2017 budget has only funded the continuation or the second tranche of the Aquino administration's Executive Order number 201, which provides for a little more than a 500 peso increase per month in the salaries of low and middle level employees who comprise the bulk of the bureaucracy, and this includes public school teachers. I therefore take this opportunity to reiterate our advocacy and our demand for Congress to immediately take steps to pass a new law on salaries that will incorporate the demands, especially of rank and file or lower and middle level government employees for salary increases, to address the bias of the existing salary increase law in favor of the higher level executives and officials of government who receive a much higher salary increase. We also express a similar concern regarding the matter of job security, particularly in government. During the budget deliberations, this representation strongly urged for the Duterte government to put an end to ENDO in the civil service. We found that, in fact, government, both the national government and local governments, are the biggest users of ENDO work, meaning to say the hiring of almost 600,000 persons on contracts of service and job orders. And these individuals are not even considered as employees of the government, and therefore do not enjoy the salaries and benefits of government employees. This number of almost 600,000 is almost double the number of job order and contract of service employees in 2014. We trace this to the long-standing failure of government, in particular the Civil Service Commission, to set guidelines that will limit the hiring of workers through job orders and contracts of service. So unfortunately, the national budget, the Duterte administration, through the national budget for 2017, will not address this problem of proliferation of ENDO in government, which can only be addressed through regularization of these employees, recognizing them as workers, and giving them full rights, salaries, and benefits. What of social services? In the 2017 budget, the funding for the delivery of social education, health, and housing is still, in the first place, profoundly deficient, considering the needs or the demands of our people. The DepEd's budget, for instance, may be the highest among all the departments, but there is still no sufficient funding for the establishment of public senior high schools and the building and repair of classrooms for the public school system all over the country. Our teachers and students still suffer from the inadequate maintenance and operating budgets for schools. These are only some of the needs that will not be covered by the 2017 budget. The The increases in social services budget, it's true there is an increase, as has been the case annually, yet it masks the privatization and commercialization policies which continue to be implemented and unabated. We note, for instance, that the single biggest item in the DepEd budget is the government assistance to students and teachers in private education, the GASPE program, which leapt by 69% from 21.1 billion in 2016 to 35.7% in 2017. This GASPE for 2017, which dwarfs all items under the DepEd budgets, even the operational budgets for the entire divisions of the Department of Education, includes 26.3 billion for senior high school, for the voucher program. This speaks of a privatization policy being aggressively implemented in the case of senior high school, where government relies on private provision, the private sector, to provide for senior high school instead of direct public provision by government directly investing in schools and personnel, which is in fact the clear mandate of the Constitution. The Constitution says that it is the responsibility of the state to provide free education up to the high school level, and this would include senior high school. So, as far as this representation is concerned, provision of senior high school through the voucher system does not comply with the constitutional mandate. Under other agencies, we can find funding for similar privatization and commercialization schemes and policies, which would have the effect of making social services even more expensive and inaccessible for especially the poor. And this includes public-private partnership schemes in education, health, housing, and infrastructure, including a separate 12.4 billion fund, PPP Strategic Support Fund in the DPWH budget. At this point, I would like to mention the important victory in the funding of 8.3 billion pesos for free tuition for undergraduate students in state universities and colleges. We raise a concern, however, that while there is this 8.3 billion fund for free tuition in state universities and colleges, that the President included this particular item in his veto message and placed it under conditional implementation. Specifically, our concern is with the President's directive that the CHED and DBM issue the necessary guidelines which shall include, among others, the standards and procedures for entitlement and availment of free tuition by students of state universities and colleges. We raise a concern because as far as this representation is concerned, the wording of the General Appropriations Act and the special provision providing for free tuition in state universities and colleges is very clear. And it states that, quote, starting the first semester of school year 2017 to 2018, no tuition fee shall be collected from undergraduate students. So that is very clear. As far as entitlement is concerned, as long as one is a student of state university or college, then one is entitled. So we hope that the CHED and DBM, in formulating guidelines, will not seek to limit entitlement of this free tuition. We're thinking of something like the STFAP, the Socialized Tuition Fee scheme that has been implemented in the University of the Philippines for many years. This is not the intention of Congress. As to the issue of pork barrel or PDAF, in the past few weeks, Senator Lacson has been very vocal in his critique of the 27 budget, asserting that PDAF, the so-called congressional pork barrel, still exists, can still be found in the 2017 General Appropriations Act. Our esteemed chair of the Committee on Appropriations, Congressman Carlo Nograles, has pointed out that perhaps the good Senator Lacson is confused and asserts that the 2017 General Appropriations Act is fully compliant with the landmark Supreme Court decision, Belgica versus Ochoa, abolishing the Priority Development Assistance Fund. No? So, which is which? What is true? Well, this is my take on this particular and very important issue. Our esteemed chair, Representative Nograles, is 100% correct when he says, indeed, that there is no longer any PDAF in the 2017 budget, and the budget is fully compliant with Belgica versus Ochoa. However, Senator Lacson is also correct when he says that there is still pork barrel in the 2017 General Appropriations Act, insofar as the Supreme Court itself defined pork barrel, the pork barrel system, quote, as the collective body of rules and practices that govern the manner by which lump sum discretionary funds primarily intended for local projects are utilized through the respective participants of the legislative and executive branches of government, including its members. So, unquote. So, given that definition, it's true, wala nang PDAF sa 2017 budget, pero nananatili yung pork barrel system. Which, at this point, reminds us of the limitations of the Supreme Court decision, Belgica versus Ochoa. Yes, Belgica versus Ochoa abolished the PDAF, the particular form, the particular manner by which large portions of the budget, particularly for infrastructure, are divided up by members of the legislature and assigned at their discretion, and how this fund is accessed. Yes, that particular form of mode of accessing these funds has been abolished, but in its place, new forms have evolved, no? And so the struggle must continue for the abolition of the pork barrel system. Moreover, to my knowledge, Senator Lacson did not focused on the issue of congressional pork barrel, but did not dwell on the presidential pork barrel. We in the Makabayan Bloc have always maintained that the root and source of all patronage in the budget is the presidential pork barrel. The largest lump sums, the largest discretionary lump sums are those lump sums under the control of the President of the Philippines. And so we still see in the 2017 budget the special purpose funds. No, these include such funds as the budgetary support for government corporations, the unprogrammed funds, contingent funds, and so on. No, And also, we include in the matter of presidential pork barrel, which remains very much alive and kicking in the 2017 budget, the conspicuous increase in the budget of the Office of the President, no? From 2.8 billion in the 2016 General Appropriations Act. The budget of the Office of the President for 2017 has ballooned to 20.17 billion. Notable is the increase in total MOE for the Office of the President. From last year's 1.9 billion, it is now 19.28 billion. No? And it is worth noting that this increase includes tremendous increases in travel and communications expenses and in confidential and intelligence funds for the Office of the President. For example, traveling expenses in 2016 was 313 million. It is now 2.1 billion. Communications expenses from 23.8 million has ballooned to 1.3 billion. That's a an increase of 55 times from the previous years. The confidential funds, from 250 million, it is now 1.25 billion. And the intelligence funds, from last year's 250 million, it is now again 1.25 billion, an increase of 5 times. No? A 5-time increase compared to last year. And these confidential and intelligence funds under the Office of the President are of particular concern because, as my colleague in the Kabataan Party List has described it, these are so-called this is the so-called black budget of agencies where practically no public scrutiny is afforded as regards to the use of confidential and intelligence funds. We also note that the 2017 budget provides for significant increases in the budgets of the PNP, the Philippine National Police, and the Armed Forces of the Philippines. This means that there will be continued funding for the repressive activities of the police and the military, the continuing counterinsurgency operations, even in the context of mutual unilateral ceasefires between the AFP, the military, and the CPP, NPA, NDF. Proof of which includes the continuing human rights violations in the countryside, particularly against Lumad, the Lumad population in Mindanao. And of course, the tide of extrajudicial killings in the course of this administration's war on drugs, which now runs to over 6,000 deaths, with the PNP largely unconcerned as far as addressing this rampage of murder of fellow Filipinos. For these reasons, Mr. Speaker, we voted no to the 2017 budget. We in the Makabayan Bloc voted no. And the above observations indicate that as far as the fundamentals of this budget are concerned, change has not come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the privileged speech of the Honorable Tino to the Committee on Rules. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, before we recognize the next to avail of the privilege hour, we'd like to greet some guests in the gallery. In the gallery are the guests of the Honorable Cheryl De Loso Montalia of the 2nd District of Zambales. These are the Philippine League of Secretaries to the Sangguniang Officers of Region 3. SB Secretary Maricel Sudut, Gerby Anito, Joy Gopez, Catherine Fan, Jay Sangalang, Troy Gripo, Nezi Lustu Hubinal, Eloisa Valdez Pacheco, and Jose Pacheco.
May the guest of Congresswoman Montalia please rise and be recognized. Welcome to House of Representatives. Majority Leader.
Other guests of the Honorable Montalia is also in the gallery. These are the Council of Personal Officers of Zambales, Olongapo City Chapter, namely Abigail Abad, Camelia Datugan, Teresita Lising, Adeline Catolico, Eleanor Abasta, Myrna Lara, Rovena Elaiba, Maribeth Garcia, Del Alarma, Oria Bolasco, Mercedes Foronda, Lolita Reyes Dulas, Loida Maturgo, Charlie Asinas, Angelica Hoy Mos, Margie Asio, and Nicolette Rojo.
May the guest of Congresswoman De Loso Montalia please rise and be recognized. Welcome to the House of Representatives. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable John Bertis of Party List Acts OFW who wishes to avail of the privilege hour.
Representative Aniceto John Bertis, the third Party List Acts OFW is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Majority Leader. Good afternoon, my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, allow me to rise on the questions of personal privilege to raise once again the concerns of our OFWs, or Overseas Filipino Workers. Last December 2016, the Department of Finance announced that by September 2017, the doors of a new OFW bank would be open to the public. Based on the press release issued by the Department of Finance, the Land Bank of the Philippines will use its money to buy the Philippine Postal Savings Bank Incorporated, or PPSBI, turn it into a subsidiary bank to be known as the OFW Bank. Land Bank President Mr. Alex Binaventura said, and I quote, "The OFW Bank will be a listed company with an authorized capital of 3 billion pesos and a subscribed capital of 2 billion, of which 1 billion is paid up by Land Bank. Another 1 billion will be open for subscriptions to overseas Filipino workers who can acquire them by buying shares in the bank." In his visit to Japan, President Duterte informed the Filipino community that he was thinking about creating an overseas workers bank. The Filipino workers in Japan and across the globe welcomed this announcement. However, the roadmap in creating this bank, as revealed by the Finance Department, has been met with some apprehensions. In a letter addressed to this sample representative, a non-partisan coalition of OFW groups raised the following questions. Why buy out a cash-strapped and heavily indebted postal bank and pass this on as an OFW bank? Why not create a real, authentic OFW bank through legislations and with the direct participations of the OFW themselves? How will ordinary OFWs and their families, including tens of thousands of distressed OFW from Saudi Arabia, benefit from Land Bank's subsidiary OFW Bank? Will this new OFW Bank be able to provide non-haram banking services and products to the increasing number of Muslims, OFWs, and their families? Has Land Bank consulted the farmers and the other agricultural groups prior to engaging the Postal Bank management in negotiations, considering the huge capital infusions involved? What role would OWA or Overseas Workers Welfare Administrations, as the primary government agency representing the interests of millions of OFWs, play in ensuring the viability and legitimacy of the so-called OFW Bank? Mr. Speaker, these are very important questions, and it's truly unfortunate that even I, as the lone party list representative for our overseas Filipino workers and their families, cannot supply the answers. It seems only the Department of Finance, the Land Bank of the Philippines, and the Philippine Postal Savings Bank are involved in these billion peso conversions. We certainly don't want a bank that was created to bail out another government bank. Kung gagamitin lang ang OFWs para mabura ang liabilities ng Postal Bank, hindi po ito OFW Bank. Ang dapat natawagin dito ay Saklolo Bank po ang dapat nating itawag. Because we all know that the Philippine Postal Savings Bank is not without problems. In fact, no less than the Commission on Audit has this say about the state of the Postal Bank in 2015 audit report. PPSBI recorded the cash balance of the Project Drive Fund amounting to 235 million as capital in its book of accounts under conditions that the same shall be used for its original purpose. Said balance came from the fund amounting to 500 million released by the national government to PPSBI for disbursement to the national government's microfinance program for the transport sector. In January of 2012, PPSBI relaunched its microfinance program and renamed it Arrancada Pasada. Loans amounting to only 66 million, representing a little more than 1/4 of 1% of the converted Project Drive Fund was released for said program. Further, the treatment on the cash balance as capital was in violations of Section 84 of Presidential Decree 1445 and Section 28 of Article 6 of the Philippine Constitution. The implementation of Project Drive is subject of a special audit by the Commissions on Audit, the results of which shall be covered by a separate audit report. Hindi ba dapat hintayin muna ng Land Bank of the Philippines ang resulta ng special audit ng Commission ng Audit sa Project Drive, kung saan ang pondo para dito ay pinadaan sa Postal Savings Bank sa ilalim ng dalawang administrasyon? Mr. Speaker, ang OFW sector ay may kahilingan po sana kay Pangulong Duterte. Bakit hindi po natin ayusin muna ang sitwasyon ng pamamalakad ng Postal Bank sa pamamagitan ng paglalagay ng mga OFW bankers upang masubaybayan ng gusto ang rehabilitasyon program para sa Postal Bank? Initially, we can change the compositions of the Board of Directors and put it in key officer who really understand the seemingly simple yet truly complex dynamics of OFW transactions. Mr. Speaker, we can try this track first without pouring billions of pesos that Land Bank should be using to help its farmers beneficiaries. Postbank currently has 31 branches and microfinancing banking offices nationwide. It does not have even a single overseas office. Compared to this, a well-established banks that now cater to the needs of OFW with thousands of ATM machines and hundreds of branches nationwide. How many billions will be required and how long would it take to modernize the Philippine Postal Savings Bank to make this strip bank at par with the best banks that we have in the Philippines today? Naaalala ko po tuloy ang kwento ng isang tricycle driver at ang kanyang misis na si Pe. Minsan, sa sobrang pagod sa gawaing bahay, napabuntong hinga si misis. Sana naging donya na lang ako. Naisip ng tricycle driver, isang araw, tinawag niya ang kanyang misis at pinakita ang lumang tricycle na may bagong pintura at sa harap at likod nito ay nakasulat, Doña Fe. Mr. Speaker, batid ko na tulad ni Pe, maraming nagmamahal ng sektor ng mga overseas Filipino workers. Pangarap namin magkaroon ng bangko pero hindi sa salita lamang, hindi sa letra lamang at hindi sa forma lamang. We want a banking institution that is world-class as a modern-day heroes. I appeal therefore to the leadership of the House and to all our colleagues. Please support our resolution to be filed by yours truly, seeking an immediate inquiry into the Department of Finance plans to convert Philippine Postal Savings Bank Incorporated into a subsidiary bank of our OFW using Land Bank of the Philippines. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Anthony Bravo of Co-op NATCO Party List for his interpellation.
Representative Bravo is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Good afternoon to everyone. Will the distinguished representative from OFW Party List yield to some questions from this representation?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, distinguished colleague. Mr. Speaker, first I would like to commend the representative from ACT's OFW Party List for informing this August Chamber about the relevant and timely issue on the conversion of Postal Bank to an OFW bank. May the Honorable OFW representative indulge this representation about this issue. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, how much is the authorized capitalization for the Postal Bank?
It has an authorized capital stock of 1 billion with 500 million actually subscribed and 300 million paid up capital.
With that
Mr.
figure,
Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, is it practical that Land Bank will buy it for 3 billion, as you made mention? Am I right?
Looking at the figure, I don't think, Mr. Speaker, it is advisable or even practical for Land Bank to purchase Postal Bank at 3 billion pesos.
So with the charter and capital stock, not to mention the controversies involving the Postal Bank, do you think the plan of converting it to an OFW bank through Land Bank will really be a viable and effective strategy?
No, Mr. Speaker, because that Postal Bank has only only have 25 branches nationwide, and as you know that OFWs are remitting billions of dollars annually, and branches is the most vital and it's a banking structure. Plus, Postal Bank doesn't have a international offices or it needs an overseas bank to have a foreign partners from different countries in order to be called as in order to service the needs of our OFWs.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, is this how you envision an OFW bank to be created?
No, Mr. Speaker, because as of now, the OFW has a private trust fund in OWA right now, which is amounting to 20 billion, and half of which is deposited in Land Bank. So if Land Bank will going to purchase and take over Postal Bank and change it to an OFW bank, para naman po tayong ginigisa sa sarili nating mantika. Might as well, we will have our own bank using our own money that is sitting and deposited in or being managed by OWA for so many years. Na alam naman natin, sa libo-libo mga distress workers sa mga OFW nagre-reklamo, pati ang kanilang mga pamilya, na wala silang nakukuhang pakinabang dito sa pondo na ito.
So, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, if you will agree on particular proposal coming from the Department of Finance on such creation of OFW Bank through by acquiring the postal bank through the LBP, it will never serve the very purpose why a such bank will be created as far as OFWs are concerned.
Definitely, Mr. Speaker, because we have to determine first that it will really going to serve the need of our OFW, not only harnessing the remittances or the billion of dollars remittances of our OFW, but as well as the livelihood programs and other benefits that a bank will be created. Na alam po natin na marami pong umuwi sa katulad kong mga OFW na pagdating sa Pilipinas ay naghahanap ng kanyang reintegration program ng gobyerno at wala po tayong maibigay o wala man lang tayong maitulong na puhunan. Isa sa mga example nito ay mga mahigit sa 6,000 umuwi from Saudi Arabia na tayo pa mismo ang sumundo at sinalubong ng ating mahal na presidente na pinangakuan na natin ng mga kung ano-anong livelihood program. Sila ay mga nasa probinsya, pero pag sila ay dumudulog sa DSWD, sa OWA, o kahit sa DOLE ay wala silang makuwang tulong. Bakit ang Land Bank ang bibili ng Postal Bank na alam naman natin na nalulugi na at problemado at gagawin tong OFW Bank? Samantalang meron po tayong 20 billion pesos na ito ay dugo at pawis ng mga OFW na hinuhulog nila taon-taon na $25 kada lalabas sila ng bansa natin, na ngayon ay 20 billion, hindi man lang natin mapakinabangan. At kung saan pwede itong might as well na magkaroon ng magtatag ang OWA ng isang group of experts that will going to study the viability of having our own bank, not buying a dying bank and call it an OFW at gamitin para ang pera ng mga OFW ang mag-revive o bumuhay dito. Alam ko po na marami rin tayong mga government bank na nalugi. Might as well siguro mag-concentrate na lang ang Land Bank tulad ng Coco Levy Fund na 300 million. Ang kakarampot na 20 billion ng OFW ay wag na natin pag-interesan pa. At ang ating mga pamilya ng OFW ay umaasa rin na sana pagkakaroon ng sariling bangko ng mga OFW, ito yung malalapitan mo na pwede kang humingi o makalapit, makahingi ng tulong para sa loan or livelihood programs na sa ngayon ito po ang wala talaga. Kaya nga po, kalahati ng 6,000 umuwi galing sa Saudi Arabia ang ngayon ay nagsisibalikan na ulit sa Saudi Arabia kung saan sila ay nagkaroon ng trauma at malagim na mga karanasan na halos lahat ang karamihan sa kanila ay nagkamatay na, ay ang mga pamilya nila ay nabuwag na dahil nga po wala silang mapakain. So, hindi ko po nakikita ang viability ng Land Bank na mas marami pang dapat na inaasikaso, lalong-lalo na sa sektor ng mga agrikultura. At ang isa pa, bakit Postal Bank lang? Meron naman din tayong isang Amana Bank na government bank na pwede mo ring emerge nang sa ganon maserbisyohan naman ng ating mga kapatid sa Mindanao na napakalaking bilang ng mga OFW ay mga Muslim, which is alam naman natin, iba ang kanilang banking system. Is it conforming to non-haram banking system ang itatatag ng ating Department of Finance? Hindi po kami nagmamadali, mas maiging pag-aralan muna nating maigi ang gamit ng pangalang OFW at pagkakaroon ng sariling OFW Bank.
So, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, it is a firm stand of the representative from ACT OFW party list not to go with the proposal in the creation of or converting the postal bank into OFW bank. So, what will be your proposed solution to this matter, distinguished Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I propose that since we have 20 billion funds in OWA and part of it can be used as reintegrations or research and development, I propose that OWA should create a group of experts that will going to study the viability of having our own OFW bank using its own money instead of Land Bank owning and acquiring a troubled postal bank, and 70% of its ownership will be for Land Bank and 30% only for OFW. In that way, we can do it in reverse, 70% ownership of OFW and 30% ownership of Land Bank just because of their banking expertise.
Thank you for that response. Mr. Speaker, may go back to the issue of creation of OFW Bank through Land Bank. Do you know what will be the percentage of sharing?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, on the proposed, as per the press statement of Secretary of Department of Finance, that 70% will be the shares of Land Bank and 30% will be open for OFW. Para naman kaming nagmamakaawa at ang pangalan namin na nakabandera sa bangkong ito at kami ang minority.
So it will not be wholly owned by the OFWs, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague.
No, Mr. Speaker, it will not be wholly owned by the OFW.
I commend you, distinguished colleague, Mr. Speaker, for raising about non-harm banking products and services for our Muslim brothers and sisters, as you made mention a while ago. This might be overlooked in the plan of converting Postal Bank into the OFW Bank. How do you think will this be addressed?
Yes, yes, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps the proponents should look into the operations of Amana Bank, which is the only government-controlled bank compliant to non-haram, or meaning unforbidden banking product and services. This will ensure that no one will be left out from among the members of the sectors of the OFW Bank intends to serve. Meron po tayong Amana Bank na nagsisilbi sa ating mga kapatid na mga Muslim sa Mindanao at napakalaki ng bilang ng mga OFW ngayon sa ibang bansa ay mga Muslims. They have their non-haram banking system. Hindi rin po ito tinagnan ng ating Department of Finance sa pag-acquire ng Postal Bank, which at the moment, Amana Bank is under DBP. Bakit hindi muna natin pag-aralan nang sa ganun po mapakinabangan din namin ang mga tinatawag na non-haram products para sa ating mga kapatid na Muslim sa Mindanao?
Thank you for that answer, distinguished colleague. Mr. Speaker, I truly believe this is a very vital matter to you, for it directly concerns your sector. But in your speech a while ago, it seems that you weren't consulted regarding this matter. Am I correct with my understanding, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
How about your sector? Were they also consulted?
No, Mr. Speaker.
So if not, how are you going, or your sector, be planning on how to participate in this process?
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, a group of civil society organizations, or CSOs, sent a letter to my office regarding the matter, saying that they are in full support of the OFW agenda of the President, but they have several questions concerning the creation of an OFW bank, for they weren't informed. That's why, as the lone representative of OFW, Mr. Speaker, today, privileged speech and the filing of resolution directing the appropriate House committee to conduct an inquiry on the plan of actions of the Department of Finance, the Land Bank of the Philippines and the Philippine Postal Corporations, and other concerned agencies to establish a bank for overseas workers, start to a plan to participate in this very important issue so that our sector will be consulted in these major decisions of having our own OFW bank. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you for those kind answer, distinguished colleague. Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, I would like to manifest that, first I would like you to be informed that this representation is a former OFW, and I would like to manifest in full support of the position of the representative ACT OFW Congressman John Bertis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, distinguished colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Bertis and its interpolations to the Committee on Rules. So move.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend the privilege hour.
There's any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we call the roll of members. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Secretariat is hereby directed to call the rolls.
Roll call of members, honorable representatives. Abad, Abaya, Abayon, Abilianosa, Abu, Abueg, Acharon, Akop, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adjong, Adbincula, Agaraw, Agabaw, Aglipay Bilyar, Albano, Alcala, Alejano, Almario, Almonte, Alonte Nagiat, Alvarez Franz, Alvarez Mercedes, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante, Amatong, Andaya, Angara Castillo, Antonino, Antonio, Aragones, Arbison, Arcillas, Arenas, Atienza, Aumentado, Bagaw, Bagaching, Bagilat, Banal, Barbers, Barsaga, Batawil, Batucabe, Bautista Bandigan, Belaro, Belmonte Feliciano, Belmonte Jose Christopher, Belmonte Ricardo, Benitez, Bernos, Bertiz, Biason, Billones, Biron, Bulilia, Bondok, Bordado, Bravo Anthony, Bravo Maravida, Brosas, Bulot Bintang, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto Rubiano, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Cari, Casilaw, Castelo, Castro Franz, Castro Fredenil, Catampo, Cayetano, Celeste, Sirapica, Cirilles, Chavez, Chipeco, Co, Cubanco, Collantes, Cortés, Fortuna, Cosalan, Crisólogo, Cuba, Cuaresma, Cueva, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, De Vera, Defensor, Del Mar, De Rosario, De Losa Montaña, De Maporo Abdullah, De Maporo Khalid, Duavit, Durano, Di, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Eusebio, Ibardone, Fariñas, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Ferriol, Loirendo, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Fentebella, Garbin, Garcia Gwendolyn, Garcia Jose, Garcia Albano, Garin Richard, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Heron, Goana Cristina, Gomart, Gomez, Gonzaga, Gonzales Alexandria, Gonzales Aurelio Dong, Gonzales Fernando, Borseta, Gulyas, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hoffer, Alusos, Javier, Ko, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lagman, Lanete, Laugan, Lasatin, Liachon, Lee, Lim Kay Chong, Lobregat, Lopez Benhur, Lopez Carlo, Lopez Manuel, Loyola, Macapagal-Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Manalo, Mangawang, Mangododato Suarto, Mangododato Sajid, Marcoleta, Marcos, Mariño, Marquez, Martinez, Matugas, Miliana, Mending, Mendoza, Mercado, Mirasol, Montoro, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles Jericho, Nograles Carlo, Nolasco, Nunez Malañaon, Guaminal, Ocampo, Olivares, Ong Edwin, Ong Henry, Ortega Pablo, Ortega Vini, Pacquiao, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panganiban, Panotes, Papandayan, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Primicia Salabas, Kimbo, Radasa, Ramirisato, Ramos, Relampagos, Revilla, Robopuno, Robes, Rocamora, Rodriguez Isidro, Rodriguez Maximo, Roman, Romero, Romualdez, Romualdo, Roque Hari, Roque Rogelio, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sahali, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Salon, Sambar, Sandoval, Santos Recto, Sarmiento Cesar, Sarmiento Edgar, Sabellano, Sema, Xiao, Silverio, Singson, Swansea Israelita, Swansea Horacio, Suarez, Si Alvarado, Tambunting, Tan Angelina, Tan Milagrosa, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Teves, Chanco, Ting, Tiño, Tolentino, Treñas, Tugna, Tupas, Turabe Nataman, Ti, Umali, Unabia, Ungab, Unico, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Uy Barreta, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Vilarde, Velasco, Velasco Catera, Veloso, Vergara, Villaferte, Villanueva, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica, Villarin, Villago, Yap Arthur, Yap Melesio, Yap Victor, Yu, Samora Marcamen, Samora Ronaldo, Sarate, Subiri. Mr. Speaker, the roll call shows that 228 members responded to the call.
With 228 members responding to the call, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader,
Mr. Speaker, I move that we resume the privilege hour.
is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we extend the privilege hour to another hour, for another hour,
there
upon
any-
expiration of the privilege hour.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader,
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Jose Atienza of Party List Buhay who wishes to avail of the privilege hour. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Jose Atienza Jr. of Party List Buhay is hereby recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. At maraming salamat po sa ating kapulungan. Ako po'y magbibigay lamang ng konting paalala upang mailagay po naman natin sa ating tala ng ating Kongreso ang buhay ng isang tao, isang lalaki, at may tuturing nating isang bayani ng ating bansa. Noong Enero o Primero, umanaw ang isang Manileño na nagngangalang Mel Lopez. Siya po isang taong nakasama ko sa larangan ng politika at paglilingkod sa ating mga mamamayan. Kaya ako po'y naglalakas loob na magbigay ng konting pananalita sapagkat siya ay hindi na natin kasama ngayon. In his life, political life, social life, I saw him as a real man, isang tunay na lalaki at Pilipinong may pagmamahal sa ating bansa. Sapagkat dumaan kami sa mga pagsubok ng hadlang sa ating demokrasya, si Mel Lopez ay palaging nandoon at namumuno. We were together in the Plaza Miranda bombing kung saan po kami binato ng granada na kami po'y tumatakbo lamang bilang mga miyembro ng City Council ng Maynila. At kami po naman, sa awa ng Panginoon, ay hindi po naman nadisgrasya. Although the first grenade exploded right in front of us, we were both saved providentially. But instead of being cowed into submission, Mel Lopez continued to lead the opposition in Manila so that we may all be enlightened and inspired to continue the struggle for a genuine democracy in the land. Isang demokrasyang magbibigay ng buhay na mas higit dito sa ating nakikita at natatamasa ngayon. Isang buhay na magbibigay ng kasaganahan sa pangkaraniwang mamamayang Pilipino. Yun po ang adikain itong taong ito. Sinasabi ko lamang sa ating minority leader kanina kung sino si Mel Lopez sa aking pagkakilala. Isang tunay na tao. What you see is what you get. What you get. What he says is what he does. At wala pong halong pagbabalat kayo kapag ka siya ay gumalaw para sa ating mga mamamayan. From the humble beginnings of a political, social, and Christian leader in Tondo, this man rose to become one of the brightest stars in the regular Batasan Pambansa. Simply because he was always involved with the struggle to give us a democracy that will really provide opportunities for everyone. Hindi ko po malilimutan na noong 1971 na kami ay naging survivors of the Plaza Miranda bombing, Mel Lopez continued his political career. His past led him to become very involved in the anti-martial law movement which all of us resisted at that point. Hindi po nawawala si Mel Lopez basta't meron pong pag-uusapang upang ihayag ang damdamin ng bayan, namumuno po yung taong yun. Kaya dumaan po ang mahabang madilim na panahon ng batas militar, si Mel Lopez ay kasama ng masang Manileño sa ating pagsisikap mapalayat ang ating sarili sa tanikala ng batas militar. In 1978, tumawag po ng halalan ang naghaharing diktador At andun po si Mel Lopez, kasama rin po. Siya po ang bumuo ng ticket na iniharap namin upang labanan ang dambuhalang KBL, Kilusang Bagong Lipunan, na alam naman namin nanalo ang sigaw ng bayan, ang kinapanganakan ng ating laban party ngayon, subalit hindi po nagwagi sa bilangan. Nadaya, kaya ang bayaning si Ninoy Aquino ay hindi rin nanalo. Ang lahat ng mga lumaban noong 1978, ni isa walang nanalo. Subalit hindi nasiraan ng loob si Mel Lopez. Pinagpatuloy po niya ang kanyang pamumuno sa amin ng mga tiga Maynila. At nung sumapit po ang 1980 elections na tumawag ng local elections ang diktador, wala pong gustong lumaban sapagkat alam namin walang mananalo. Ang sabi nga, kung si Ninoy Aquino hindi nanalo, paano tayo mananalo? Subalit, si Mel Lopez ang ginawa naming kandidato opisyal ng oposisyon upang harapin ang kandidato ng KBL sa Maynila. Nagpatuloy po ang taong ito, bagamat hindi nagtagumpay ang sinuman noong 1980, nagpatuloy po ang aming organisasyon upang ipagtanggol at itaguyod ang karapatang pantao nang noon ay hindi na kilala ng maraming kabataan. I know that there are many heroes of the revolution, so that today we are enjoying freedom and democracy. We now enjoy a free discussion and debate in this chamber, wherein once upon a time, Mel Lopez's voice rang in every corner of the Batasan Pambansa. Hindi ko po malilimutan yung mga pagkakataong dinidebate namin ang KBL doon sa Bataan Nuclear Plant, doon sa impeachment ni Mr. Marcos, doon sa Amendment number 6 kung saan gumagawa ng batas ang diktador at hindi po binibigyan ng laya ang regular Batasan Pambansa. So when we look back, we cannot help but appreciate the contributions of this man. Kung hindi ko po sasabihin ito ngayon upang maitala sa ating records, wala na pong magsasabi nito sapagkat wala na pong naiiwan dito sa ating kapulungan ni isang miyembro ng oposisyon noong mga panahong yon. There were 59 of us, and I'm very happy God has given me the opportunity to be the only voice of that group of 59 who are fighting for the liberation of our country. But many of the children of our colleagues are here. Andito po si Art Defensor, anak ni Art Defensor, ni Arto Defensor. Andito po si Villafuerte, anak ni Louis Villafuerte. Andito po si Mrs. Cagas, ang may bahay po ni Douglas Cagas. At marami pang iba. Subalit hindi po siguro makukumpleto ang ating appreciation sa mga nangyari sa nakaraan kung di natin babanggitin ang pangalan ni Mel Lopez. Maaari po nating ihambing, isama sa talaan kung atin pong gugunitain ang mga pangalang Cecilia Muñoz Palma, Jaime Ferrer, Cesar Climaco, Pepito Laurel, Monching Mitra, Hilario Davide, Marcelo Fernan, at marami pang iba. Subalit, ang pangalang Mel Lopez ay hindi po pwedeng at hindi dapat maiwanan. I stand today to remind everyone that there were Filipinos and there were lawmakers who dared stand up for what was right then. Hindi po madali ang tumayo ng mga panahong yon dito sa ating Kongreso. Tumayo ka, hindi mo alam kung makakatawid ka pa dito po sa ating dinadaan ng well-lighted highways sapagkat nung araw, madilim po yung mga highway na yan. Kaya, tumayo ka rin, ipaglaban mo kung ano ang tama, ay kinakailangan ng katatagan ng kalooban at tibay ng iyong prinsipyo sa iyong ipinaglalaban. Mel Lopez excelled in all of those. I remember that fateful night when he dared point at the chairman of the COMELEC, who was also a member of this body in the regular Batasan Pambansa. At sinabi niyang, itigil mo na sapagkat ikaw ay makapalang mukha at marumi ang budhi. And for that statement, he almost got expelled from the regular Batasan Pambansa. But he would not shirk. He would not allow that what he said would be removed from the records of the Batasan. simply because we knew that cheating was being done in every political exercise, whether it was a referendum, whether it was a plebiscite, whether it was an election. Nandadaya po ang administrasyon ng mga panahon yun. At hindi ko rin po nalilimutan yung yugto kung saan pinatay, pinaslang si Ninoy Aquino sa airport. Sapagkat nangibabaw na naman ang tinig ni Mel Lopez sapagkat pinaglaban niya ang katarungan sa pagpatay kay Ninoy. Those were very challenging times, and only men of solid character would have been able to stand up to resist the fear that was being hoisted all over the land. Mahirap po ang lumaban sa diktadurya. Marami po ang nalagas sa hanay ng mga sumigaw na mga kabataan. Nameless, faceless, young Filipinos were sacrificed in the altar of our democratic struggle, and we may never even hear their names anymore, as we even try our best to recall and recollect whenever there is an opportunity. But the name of Mel Lopez should be remembered because he was very, very instrumental in our continuing nightly struggle in this body. Naalala ko po na bawat galaw, bawat butuhan, bawat desisyon nitong kapulungang ito ay dumadaan sa masusing pagdidebate at pagbibigay paraan sa prinsipyo ng bawat isa. We fought for the democratic space that we are now enjoying. So we must now value this because people have already come and gone. Marami po sa kanila ay wala na rito ngayon sa mundong ating ginagalawan. Subalit yung pangalan nila hindi natin dapat kalimutan sapagkat itong mga pangalan ito ang magbibigay ng inspirasyon sa mga kabataan upang ang ating demokrasya at ating kalayaan ay hindi na maalis sa ating mga kamay kailanman. We must continue and learn how to stand up for what is right. If the President is wrong, we must say and outright tell him he is wrong. When he is right, we should support whatever he would want to do for the Filipino people. Sa ngayon, dumadaan na naman tayo sa makitid na landas kung saan ang batas militar ay binabanggit na maaaring ipataw na muli sa ating lahat. When that happens, this body will disappear, will dissipate, will be abolished. So we must not allow it. We must not allow martial law to again rule the land. As Mel Lopez would have been here, if he were here, he would be fighting with us all the way. And I would expect my colleagues to be inspired, to also defend what we have already accomplished. Dumaan na po tayo sa EDSA. Dumaan po tayo sa mga pagsubok. That fateful night of the Marcos Proclamation in 1986, February 15, 1986, kung saan ipoproklama na ang sinabi nilang nanalong Pangulo, ang oposisyon noon ay nagpulong at kami lahat ay nagkaisa. Kami ay lalabas at magwa-walk out sapagkat ayaw naming makiisa sa isang proklamasyong alam naming ninakaw sa kapangyarihan ng mamamayan. We saw the ballots, we saw the returns, we saw the tampering that was done. So how could we participate in a rigged election? But I will not forget the voice of Mel Lopez in our in-chamber caucus, where he was very, very eloquently saying, we cannot be a part of this proclamation. We must all go home tonight, even under the threat of expulsion. So when we stood up here, and the KBL was proclaiming the former President Marcos, we all decided to stand up and walk out. Amidst the shouting, the jeering, the insults that we got from this gallery, which they filled with partisans. Pinuno po ito ng mga leader ng mga kilosang bagong lipunan. Minura kami, binato kami, inalipusta kami, subalit umalis kami habang isinisigaw ng speaker noon. Hindi na kayo babalik sapagkat we will now move for your expulsion. Yes, we were ready to be expelled because we decided to fight for what is right. And Mel Lopez was in the middle of all of that. So, to allow his passing away without anything being written about him would be a travesty of justice and a distortion of history. Because we know that there are those sectors who are out to really remove the participation and contribution of the parliamentary struggle in the liberation of the country. Pag pinag-uusapan po ang EDSA, pag pinag-uusapan ang ating bagong kalayaan, hindi na nababanggit ang mga lumaban dito sa Kongreso ito. Hindi na po nababanggit man lang ang pangalan ng mga taong tumayo at nanindigan. And I will never forget my friend Mel Lopez because he was always in the thick of any debate on the floor of the regular Batasan Pambansa. So on January 1st, he was now given by the Lord Almighty to join him. But even if now that he is now with the Lord Almighty, we who are still struggling in our country must be inspired by the life of a man like Mel Lopez to continue what he has not seen in his lifetime, the total and genuine liberation of our people. Kailangan pong umunlad ang ating bayan, kailangan pong baguhin natin ang mga makalumang pag-iisip na tayo ay kayang takutin, tayo nilang pilitin, hindi po dapat nating pabayaan ang mga prinsipyo na ating ngayon ay taglay na. Liberty, democracy, and a better life for the Filipino can be accomplished by the new set of leaders in Congress. Ako po'y naniniwala na itong Kongreso ito, the 17th Congress of the Philippines, will stand up in protection of the rights of each and every citizen, no matter how poor he is. Gabi-gabi, pinapatay ang mga tao, kailangan magsalita tayo. Ngayon napipinto ang mga panukalang batas na lalo pang kikitil sa kapangyarihan ng mamamayan, kailangan magsalita tayo. Kung magkakaroon tayo ng pagkakataon, tulungan ang ating Pangulo, gawin natin. As we are always ready to help him. But to sacrifice the rights and the liberties that we now enjoy as the fruits of the labors of those people who fought for them, it would be an insult to our history. Yun po naman ay kailangan nating aminin, ang tungkulin ngayon ay nasa ating mga balikat. Huwag nating kalilimutan ang mga taong tumayo sa gitna ng kadiliman. If we are now enjoying partial democratic space where we can speak like this freely in this chamber, we must continue to defend that right so that the coming generations will gain from it. Sila po naman ang makinabang dito sa ating ginagawa sa kasalukuyan. So Mel Lopez, a genuine Filipino, isang tunay na lalaki na mayroong salita at hindi lamang salita kundi gawa. A genuine family man, a Christian leader, a community and social leader, a defender of human rights, and a genuine patriot. I would like all of these things that we said to be written in the annals and the history of our Congress. Because we did not enjoy this simply because it was given to us. We fought for this, and we must continue fighting for its retention. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues.
Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker.
Move that to recognize the Honorable Lopez, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Representative Lopez is hereby recognized.
I rise on a matter of personal privilege, Mr. Speaker. At una ho sa lahat, isa pong karangalan at I would like to commend the good gentleman from Manila. Ito pong taong ito, isang magiting, matapang at honorableng lalaki na nakasama po ng aking ama sa mahigit na 5 dekada ng kanila pong pakikibaka at paglaban, lalong-lalo na po sa mga nanaaping mga tiga-Maynila. Sa nakalipas pong 20 minuto na nagsasalita po ang aking pong tinuturing na parang ama na rin ho, ay binigkas po niya at sinalaysay ng masusi ang talambuhay at sakripisyo na inalay ng aking ama. Kaya po ako po'y sa ngalan ng aming pamilya at sa aming pong libu-libong mga kasamahan, lalo na po sa aming magiting na bayan ng Tondo, ay malugod po kaming nagpapasalamat po sa inyo pong pagbabanggit ng magandang mga pananalita tungkol sa aking ama. Sa lahat po ng nakiramay, maraming salamat din po at tatanuin ko pong isang utang na loob, lalong-lalo na po ng aming sa pamilya. Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. Magandang hapon po.
Majority Leader.
Isa pong karangalan ang aking nakamtan na makapagsalita ng malaya tungkol sa isang bayani katulad ni Mel. Kaya't huwag niyo po akong pasalamatan. Ang pasalamatan natin ang buhay ng taong ito na ibinigay niya hindi lang para sa lungsod, kundi para sa ating bansa.
Salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that to refer the speech of the Honorable Atienza and its interpellation to the Committee on Rules. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Minority Leader, the Honorable Danilo Suarez, who wishes to avail of the privilege hour.
Representative Danilo Suarez, Minority Floor Leader, is hereby recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, colleagues. In 2003, Republic Act Number 9184, otherwise known as the Government Procurement Reform Act, was enacted in the midst of rampant corruption and government losses in procurement. The GPRA was envisioned to eliminate corruption in the public procurement system. It aimed to improve transparency and competition while eliminating political interference and collusion in the procurement process. Despite having a so-called world-class legislation, controversies continued to plague the system. The improvement of the government procurement process began in 2001, October 8, when President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo issued Executive Order Number 4, consolidating the procurement rules and procedures for all national government agencies, GOCCs, and government financial institutions, and required the use of the government electronic procurement system 2 years later. GPRA was signed into law. It codified all pertinent laws and rules governing government procurement and established the Government Procurement Policy Board to oversee its implementation. The law stipulated how public bidding should proceed, beginning with posting a notice in the Philippine Government Electronic Procurement Systems, where all government procurement opportunities, notices, result of bidding awards, and reasons for the award must be published. The GPRA is quite promising but still faces several challenges. More than 10 years since its passage, allegations of corruption still persist, and bona fide contractors are frustrated that exemplary projects are frustrated or delayed by fly-night contractors who are using the provisions of the law to conduct shakedowns, and these fly-by-night operators derail the bidding process in many ways, an example of which is when contractors from Luzon, without a single equipment, will bid in a province in Mindanao with the lowest bid with the sole intention of blackmailing legitimate contractors. The current procurement process is too stringent that it gives contractors difficulty in complying with the requirements, such as requiring very detailed specifications of materials, even to a nail's specific length. Due to a very strict procurement process, contractors exceed or even refuse to enter the bidding process. This equates to stalled projects, as seen in the low percentage of bid notices which results published by the PhilJEPs as of December 31, 2016. The trend shows that less than half of the bid notices are completed each month. Unfortunately, 40% of the country's gross domestic product is driven by infrastructure, of which should be initiated by the government. Recent issues on procurement suggest loopholes in the implementation of the law. One example of which was the alleged anomalous 24 billion military procurement assessed by the COA in 2015 and the 3.4 billion PNP purchases during the tenure of then General Purisima, where agencies failed to submit all necessary documents. Another case was when Commission on Audit reported 13.2 billion worth of infrastructure projects which were implemented in 2014 in violations of the government procurement law. Violations cited by COA were splitting of contracts, failure of contractors to pay the construction bond, sudden change in design to cover up structural defects, violation in the bidding process, and non-submission of required documents. Such violations and non-compliance resulted to awarding of contracts to bidders with inadequate bid documents. Contrary to the vision of transparency and efficiency and delays in project implementation, almost 34 billion pesos in the capital outlay of the Department of Public Ways and Highways remained unobligated as they failed to utilize the fund for much-needed infrastructure due to the delays and non-implementation of program projects. This implies a significant probability of continuing corruption in the government due to the bureaucratic process. The problems with the government procurement law are not limited to public works. Our information is that also affects the speed of delivery social services during calamity periods. Furthermore, several government agencies other than DPWH display low absorbing capacity or are spending less than their allocated budget because of rigid procurement policies. Unfortunately, their underspending implies inefficiency. With the continuing allegations of corruption and complaints in the government procurement system, we need to review the existing law, its implementing rules and procedure, and later on come up with a more effective and reality-based law. I submit that the true mark of progressive law is the encouragement of efficiency in the delivery of services. Hence, the government law should be amended to reflect the lessons learned during the last 10 years of implementation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, my dear colleague.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that to refer the privileged speech of the Honorable Minority Leader to the Committee on Rules. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that to recognize the last to avail of the privilege are the Honorable Gabriel Bordado of the 3rd District of Camarines Sur. I so move, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Representative Gabriel Bordado Jr., 3rd District, Camarines Sur, is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Typhoon Nina, packing peak winds of more than 300 kilometers per hour, struck the Bicol region on Christmas Day, directly hitting the island province of Catanduanes, along with Camarines Sur and Albay. Mr. Speaker, my district, the 3rd District of Camarines Sur, also bore the brunt of Typhoon Nina's fury. That the calamity happened on the most anticipated and supposedly joyful day of the year made the scheme of things immensely tragic. However, Mr. Speaker, the devastation and the general feeling of helplessness and deep distress in the aftermath of Typhoon Nina were somehow assuaged by the collective efforts being done by the people from both the government and private sectors to help the victims and set them up on the road to recovery. Special acknowledgement should be given to President Rodrigo Duterte for being there at the so-called ground zero and promptly extending the much-needed assistance. For her part, Vice President Leni Robredo, who is from Camarines Sur, organized Tindog Bicol, or roughly translated to English, Stand Up Bicol, to ensure the systematic and efficient provision of relief goods to the families affected by the typhoon. She also devoted almost a week visiting the ravaged barangays and giving the assurance that rehabilitation assistance would be forthcoming. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to thank my colleagues here in the House of Representatives, especially Congressman Kit Belmonte of Quezon City and Congressman Edgar Sarmiento of Samar for going out of their way to make life a bit bearable for my hapless constituents. Mr. Speaker, to fast-track the restoration of electricity in the affected areas, electric cooperatives from other provinces, notably Camarines Norte, Benguet, and Samar, are deploying manpower and equipment in order to help the overwhelmed Camarines Sur 2 Electric Cooperative. Even Meralco, through its One Meralco Foundation, has been pitching in to bring my province and district out of darkness, literally and figuratively. Mr. Speaker, our work, though, is far from over. Thousands of families are still homeless and in dire need of whatever aid we can extend. This latest calamity, moreover, underscores once again the urgent need to further empower our local governments, particularly the barangays, in the area of disaster risk reduction management. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, let me express my thanks to all of you. As we say in Bicol, Diyos mabalos po. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the privileged speech of the Honorable Bordado to the Committee on Rules. I so move, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we terminate the privilege hour.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Resolution 647 and direct the Secretary General to read the title of the resolution. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary General is directed to read House Bill 647. Resolution 647.
House Resolution 647, resolution expressing the profound sympathy and deepest condolences of the House of Representatives to the bereaved family of the late Congressman Roberto Bobby Guanzon, representative of the 1st District of Caloocan City during the 10th Congress, who passed away on December 18, 2016.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution 647.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Resolution 647 is hereby adopted. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Resolution 670 and direct the Secretary General to read the title of this resolution. I so move, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Secretary General, you are hereby directed to read Resolution 670.
House Resolution 670, resolution expressing the profound condolences of the House of Representatives to the family of Representative Francisco A. Calalay Jr., former representative of the 1st District of Quezon City during the 16th Congress.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution 670. So
Is
moved.
there any objection? The Chair hears none. Resolution 670 is hereby adopted. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Resolution 671 and direct the Secretary General to read the title of the resolution. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary General, you're directed to read House Resolution 671.
House Resolution 671, resolution expressing the profound condolences of the House of Representatives to the family of the late Emiliano C. Lopez Jr., former member of the Batasang Pambansa, former mayor of the City of Manila, and father of Representative Manuel Luis T. Lopez of the 1st District of Manila.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution 671.
Is there any objection?
In consolidation with House Resolution 653 and 683. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. Resolution 671 is hereby adopted. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with our rules governing inquiries in aid of legislation, I move that we refer the following House resolutions to the appropriate committees. House Resolution 598 to the Committee of Games and Amusements. House Resolution 599 to the Committee on Housing and Urban Development. House Resolution 601 to the Committee on Transportation. House Resolution 604 to the Committee on Housing and Urban Development. House Resolution 609 to the Committee on Overseas Workers' Affairs. House Resolution 610 to the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability. House Resolution 612 to the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability. House Resolution 614 to the Committee on Human Rights. House Resolution 615 to the Committee on Human Rights. House Resolution 616 to the Committee on Human Rights. House Resolution 625 to the Committee on Overseas Workers' Affairs. House Resolution 627 to the Committee on Agriculture and Food. House Resolution 628 to the Committee on Agriculture and Food. House Resolution 630 to the Committee on Youth and Sports Development. House Resolution 634 to the Committee on Human Rights. House Resolution 636 to the Committee on Youth and Sports Development. House Resolution 644 to the Committee on Bases Conversion. 645 to the Committee on National Defense and Security. 646 to the Committee on Foreign Affairs. 649 to the Committee on Human Rights. 654 to the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability. 656 to the Committee on Energy. I so move, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The motion is hereby approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we approve Journal Number 57, dated January 16, 2017.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The journal is hereby approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adjourn session to January 18, 2017, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I so move, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Is there any objection? The Chair hears none. The session is adjourned until tomorrow, January 18 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Tama. Sabi ko nga.